I guess for smell, as I sort of mentioned yesterday, it might be one of those more forgotten, neglected senses in this grand scheme of things, at least for humans. But getting something of a renaissance, I guess, in recent years amongst science and with sort of performances. I guess it's probably there are really kind of two senses of smell, I suppose, not just one. There's kind of the smell of sniffing, and then there's kind of the retronasal smell. Every time we swallow, a little bit of air gets pulsed out. And those are kind of two different senses, go to different parts of your head. And so people are thinking more about the distinction there between this sniffing and the retronasal smell. That said, I guess in a way, we're very rarely surprised when we sniff a food. We can pretty much guess what it will taste like from the inside. The only exceptions I know being sort of coffee that maybe smells wonderful, but then when you taste it, it can be disappointing. Never quite has the same fullness. Or kind of the French cheeses that smell horrible from the outside, but from the inside are quite enjoyable. So I'm sort of wondering whether there are things to be done there, either through the chefs or the food chemists, to make things that smell one way from the outside and different, to create surprise in a way. It didn't taste the way I thought it was going to, from the expectations that in this case were set by the smell rather than by the eye. The other thing to note would be, very often smells have the biggest impact on us when we don't know we're smelling them. So there's lots of research showing if I show you pictures of boys or girls and say how attractive are they, if I present a pleasant smell, the person will look more attractive. If I present the smell and you say there's no smell there, I can't smell anything, the effect on attractiveness is bigger. There's probably a narrow window there, but just because we can't smell something doesn't mean it's not having a big impact on us. So below the threshold can be very powerful. And finally, maybe I think one of the fascinations for the psychologists and the philosophers, and I guess for some sort of the food chefs maybe, is the fact that certain smells, maybe we're not born with any response to smells. Supposedly it's all learnt.
So please repeat, is it so? We don't have a sort of natural
response. We do to sweetness, we do to bitterness,
yeah.
But to smells, so we do not, unless they're the kind of the pungent trigeminal carbon dioxide or wasabi, which is really a sense of touch. Yeah. But for pure smells, it's all meant to be learnt, all sort of malleable, open throughout life. What our brain seems really good at is pairing smells with tastes. So things like vanilla, we described some of the scents that were pumped out earlier as being sweet, presumably through their combination with sweet tastes. Maybe there are bitter smells, or I guess the smell of lemon then may enhance the sourness of food. So this kind of smelled taste, a kind of synesthesia, some would say, is one that's very interesting in terms of how to change, I guess, people's experience of food. And if I can find a smell that you've never had before, then our brains, the sense of smell seems to be open throughout our lifetime. So if I can find a smell you've never had, so maybe water chestnut might be unusual, then within 3 trials of smelling that smell, if it's paired with a sweet taste in your tongue, your brain will kind of learn that connection, and whenever you get water chestnut smell again, food will taste just that little bit sweeter without the sugar. Hence vanilla ice cream, supposedly.
The smell is also very emotional. So I think it's the quickest way to your brain. So it's only a couple of synapses and you are there in your limbic system, and then which is the oldest part of the brain and which you really have the most emotional thing. So when you get the smell, you first get the impression if it's good or bad. And then I think that when you research smells, if you study smells, you have to go beyond that. And I think that's one thing which is very difficult in smells, that we cannot name the smells. We don't have the names, and I think that's perhaps the biggest challenge in researching, analyzing smells, that people have different names to same smells and same names for different smells. So you have to be very careful when you use the names of the smells, because mainly you can have the chemical names, of course, but we always use some kind of, if you think that something smells citrus, you can have lemon or lime or grapefruit, you can have peel, you can have juice. Very easily you can have 50 different lemons or citrus, and everyone is talking a bit different smell. I think that's one thing. And then which as Charles said, we are very good in recognition of smells. So we recognize if the smell is familiar or not, even though we usually cannot name it. But the recognition ability is very good. Then I think that the role of smells in recognition also is a food is very important, and I think that which is a little strange is that if you then go to the wine and food combination, if you combine wine and food together, so there are all the rules that you have to have in harmony, which means actually that you have the same smell in wine and same smell in food. I think this is quite nonsense, because if you think about Cabernet Sauvignon, smells like a blackcurrant, and try to combine with blackcurrant cake. You can imagine it's a horrible combination. So actually the role of smell in wine and food combination is quite minor. It's perhaps just the top of the end, but nothing else. I think in this way smell is, I think, very complicated. It's very difficult. We use it a lot. We use it for recognition, but on the final end, its role in different kind of situations can be very different.
Maybe if one looks at some restaurants today, then there's starting to be chefs who are starting to play with fragrance outside of the fragrance that's caused by the food itself. So I think if smell does make us salivate, it makes us hungry, and when we go to the train station we smell the coffee and want to have that coffee, how can a chef use scent to kind of create hunger or anticipation? That can be everything from sort of bringing smells to the table, a little perfume over your food. Getting back to the futurists who were doing that 100 years ago, but more and more chefs are trying things like that. And with the advent of new technologies, a lot of stuff in the English press a couple of days ago about the plug-in for your iPhone that will release the scent of bacon in the morning, should you want it. So a lot more possibilities about technological delivery of smell that opens up things that were formerly just too difficult to try and create smell devices. And I'm seeing as well with many food companies, so if you're selling frozen ice cream, say a chocolate ice cream Mars bar, the problem is it doesn't smell like chocolate, it's frozen, so all the volatiles are kind of suppressed. So what people might do is put the scent of chocolate into the glue, that when you open the packaging, it smells like chocolate. You think it's the chocolate, it's actually the packaging you're smelling. And there are many drinks companies now who are thinking about drinks like this and saying, could we just add the fragrance, the aroma to the lip, to the cap? You'd think it's in the drink itself, but the fragrance you're getting is, you can, at some point in the next too distant future, you won't know quite where the smell's coming from anymore, and whether it really refers to the food or it's been artificially, synthetically added to.
Yes, this discussion reminded me of a Swiss consumer behavior study that showed that the complexity of the smell, it can have an effect on consumer choices. And in this case, they found that so-called simple smells, they promoted the fluency of cognitive processing that led to a higher level of consumption. But it was not in the food store or in a restaurant, it was in a furniture store and house decoration store. And the more complex smells, the hypothesis was that it will inhibit the fluency of cognitive processing, and that actually led to a lower level of consumption. So what is your feeling about this complexity versus simpleness of odors, whether it can have an effect?
I'm sort of collecting from the comments of a reviewer of a paper when we said we have complex smells and simple smells.
Okay.
And the reviewer took us to task and said, what do you mean complex smells and simple smells? And I think it's not at all clear what we meant,
Okay.
not necessarily what other people mean.
in this piece of paper,
Yeah.
they defined or operationalized it as being just one smell or combination of maybe 3 or 4 smells.
How many chemical compounds behind the smell?
Well, I don't
Only
remember
one
that.
or few hundred?
Yeah.
I don't remember that, of course.
And I guess there's kind of not a one-to-one mapping by any means between the number of, I guess, chemical compounds in the odour and the subjective complexity. And that maybe you might have, I don't know, it might be a synthetic strawberry, which might be pretty simple with a few aroma compounds versus the real thing, which might have 600 volatiles, one far more complex than the other, sort of chemically speaking, but psychologically or subjectively, you might not necessarily see that level of depth.
Mari, you could perhaps comment at how many smells we can smell from the combination of some kind of liquid.
I want you to tell me that the smell for you, for example, apple, or what is smell for you?
Yeah, it could be, or I was thinking about, I think there is an old research which is made that people try to, in a way, that was perhaps naming that how many different kind of smells they can name from a combination. I think that was only water. Yeah, it's probably that is apple is one. Yeah, I know it's probably not one.
Yeah. Just very shortly about the chemistry of odors, but it may be that, for example, strawberry may include easily few dozens, maybe 100 different volatiles, and the ratio of these volatiles, it may dramatically influence of the association that what kind of strawberry you are talking about. The strawberry for Finns may be very different. The strawberries, for example, for people from Argentina, and for example, wild strawberries. And then we may have 100 different kind of strawberry smells that we can buy, for example, from those companies who are providing aroma smells. So that way, I think the complexity of smell, you can smell very easily even one single compound, which may be very clear for you. For example, heptanol is one of those that you can easily smell the mold cheese or the blue cheese. And that's one single compound. Very nice trick. But then if you add there, it doesn't maybe change if you add there few volatiles, but we are always talking about the interactions between different smells. And then if we are combining apple and orange and strawberry, we are talking about very complex interactions already, and people may react very differently. That what is actually the final thing that they are smelling? Is it still related to berries, fruit, or something totally different? Depending on, is it green apple or red apple? That's why I think it's very complex discussion.
Yeah, because I always, say to the people when they are tasting wines and having a lot of descriptions, so I think that it's more like expectations they are writing down, and not the real smells they smell, because it's quite a challenge to get even a couple of, in a way, real notes, if either combinations or not, but from the wine. So I think it's most of the wine writing is in a way more deceptive expectations than anything else.
There must be something about, so clearly there is a subjective sense of complexity, things that appear simple to us or complex regardless of their underlying chemical structure. And that could be a complexity over time. I suppose as a perfume evolves, the high notes may evaporate and you're left with the low notes. That becomes a complexity that's apparent only over the evolution of a smell experience or episode, versus kind of a complexity. Maybe we have a chef working in our lab, when I get a gravy smell or something, or a soup smell, it's just one thing nice, but the chef is sitting there at the table saying, yes, they put this in there, I can smell that and the other, and they can kind of segment or label the element, and that's kind of a complexity in a moment. That maybe comes in factor, does the wine taste different if you put a different label on? Yes, it does, for the various reasons. And then maybe one sees now increasingly some wine labels actually putting the names. You will smell berry, pepper, chocolate. You might smell these things in the wine, and probably that does help to bring out those smells for the consumer to identify them. If they've got a label or a latch to put things on and say, yes, why didn't I spot that before? Suddenly it's very clear because I have the name for it. But underlying there's a whole mystery, I think, of So if you take some of the most wordy of the wine writers, I think one of Robert Parker's deputies, the Emperor of Wine, and he's famous for writing thousands of words about what he can smell in a glass. He just goes on for page after page of all the aromas. Very, very complex, you would think. But the sensory scientist might say, this doesn't quite add up to me, because in the laboratory, if you start mixing different odours, it seems that the most people anybody can hold on to is 3 or maybe 6 at most separate elements. So there's a complete mismatch between the complexity as perceived by the expert and what seems to happen from lab studies, only possibly resolved by maybe wine, like perfume does evolve in the glass, in the palate, and hence you can take snapshots of that wine, and at each moment perhaps it reveals very different